So, welcome everybody. We're going to start sitting back against the wall. So what I'd like you to do is shuffle all the way back and just ensure that the whole of your back is comfortably supported by the wall. Now, depending on how that feels, if your hamstrings are tight, you might want to bend the legs, and sometimes coming into this diamond position allows the hamstrings to soften a little bit, because if our hamstrings are really tight, it tends to pull the pelvis forwards. You ideally want to have the back of your pelvis and the back of your shoulders against the wall. And often this is difficult in pregnancy because there's this tendency for the pelvis to rotate because the belly is being pulled forwards. So you might have to jiggle around a little bit, and as I said, you might find it more comfortable actually to bring the feet fully together. And if you wanted to chest your hips already, this can be your first one. So butterfly pose. It's a nice stretch for the inside of the hips. If you have got any hip niggles and you're thinking, yeah, let's have a go, let's see how the hips are, this can be your first option to come into. It's not going to be comfortable for everybody, particularly if you've got symphysis pubis dysfunction. If you're getting any niggles around the symphysis pubis area, then this is a contraindicated position, so you might want to avoid this. But it's essentially finding what's comfortable for you at the moment. Okay, and then once you have got yourself into that position, just resting your hands around your baby. And then from here, just gently closing your eyes. So you're just going to take some time to just notice how you feel. So coming into this moment of stillness. Where your body is perfectly rested. And then noticing how your body is. So taking a moment to move your awareness right the way down through the whole of your body. So particularly moving through all the joint areas like the neck, the shoulders, the upper back, the chest, lower back, hips, knees, and ankles. And then fixing your awareness on your baby. Just noticing what you're experiencing from your baby or your babies at this point in time. Is there any movement? Are they resting? Are they sleeping? And in addition to feeling this physical connection, so noticing what you're experiencing, I'd like you to just spend some time cultivating this emotional connection as well. So notice what feelings, what emotions arise as you make this physical contact with your baby, with your abdomen. So for some of you in the very early stages of your pregnancy, it might be very new, just getting used to the idea. So you might not even have had any sensations yet. So up until about 20 weeks, you don't tend to have any physical sensations. So usually after 20 weeks, when you start to get a little bit of butterfly sensations, and then moving into the late 20s, you start to get the bigger movements, and all the way through the 30s, the movements get bigger and bigger, until you wish you were back in the 20s when you didn't have any movements at all. And then bring your attention to your breath. So just feel the sensation of the inhalation. Notice how it feels. Notice where it goes to. But also notice if it's difficult. Notice if there's any restriction. So again, with our pregnancy, the later the pregnancy goes on, the more the uterus takes up the space of the lungs. And so you find towards the end of your pregnancy that breathing deeply is a challenge. So notice how the breath is. Notice how the out breath feels. Is it easier to breathe out than to breathe in? So when we think about breathing, we often perceive it to be a vertical event where we breathe up and down and the breath goes vertically. But when in pregnancy, that's not so much the case because the diaphragm can't descend quite as readily. So I'd like you to think about breathing horizontally. So as well as breathing in as low down into the lungs as you can, think about taking the breath out into the sides of the body. So you're breathing into the sides of the ribs and possibly into the backs of the ribs as well. So we have to find a different space to breathe into. And then what I'd like you to do is to work into a sighing breath. So for the next few rounds of breathing, what I'd like you to do as you breathe out is to sigh the breath. And do that for the next few exhales. And what I'd like you to focus on particularly is relaxing your jaw as you do it. So it's not so much about making a particular sound. What it is about is getting the jaw to drop down and relax. And you might find that you yawn when you do this, so that's okay. It's all part of this process of dropping the jaw. So for the next few breaths, a long, slow inhalation, expanding into the side ribs. And then as you breathe out, dropping the jaw. We'll just do that 2 more times. And notice if it's difficult to drop the jaw. Can you relax your jaw or is it quite tense? And then when you finish the next jaw relaxation out breath, you can just let the breath settle back to normal. And then you can gently open the eyes. If you want to, you can stretch the legs out in any way that feels comfortable for you. So come back into something that's comfortable. So the reason I'm getting you to drop your jaw is because there's an interesting correlation between the jaw and the cervix. And a lot of birth providers, birth practitioners have recognised that when the jaw is tight, it often relates to the cervix not dilating. And you can kind of see how that may be the case. So usually the cervix not dilating is due to mum being quite tense, quite stressed, understandably. And this kind of creates this roller coaster effect of everything kind of clamping in and literally holding the baby in because you can't relax enough to let the baby out. So relaxation is a major key to allowing and offering your baby out into the world. And when the jaw is tight, this is with the contraction. So if we imagine having a contraction, it's uncomfortable, it's challenging, and so there's every possibility that we're going to tense up. When that happens, it will correlate down to tension in the cervix as well. But if we can practice more of a relaxed jaw during those contractions on the exhalation specifically, then it will also transfer down into a relaxed cervix as well. And this is why we focus a lot on the exhale. All of the breath work that we do in the classes focus on the out breath, because during the out breath you relax more. And then if you drop the jaw as well, there is this kind of almost floppy sensation, which is something that we're looking for. We want a floppy cervix. We want a soft, open cervix. So can you just do 3 more of those jaw relaxing ha breaths, those sighing breaths, and just see how it feels now that you can link it to the cervix and sort of create this feeling of softening down in the cervix as well. See if it does feel. The other thing is the hands. So notice what's happening in the hands when you breathe out. So again, if the fists are clenched, it means there's tension everywhere else. And often the jaw and the fists go hand in hand when we tense everything up. So see if you can relax and spread the fingers, relax and soften the jaw. So 3 more breaths. Okay, does that kind of make sense? So, you know, relaxation everywhere. Okay, so let's have a look at some lower back stretches. So the bread and butter poses of our yoga classes. So can you come up onto your hands and onto your knees? Come towards the front of your mat so you've got some space behind you. And you want the hands under the shoulders and the knees under the hips, but you also want a nice long space in the spine. So if you have your hands really close and towards your knees, you haven't got a lot of room for the spine to articulate, whereas if you take the hands a bit further away, you should find you've got a bit more space in the spine. So as you breathe out, tuck your tailbone under, arch the spine to the ceiling and kind of feel that you're drawing your baby up and towards your body. You can push the hands firmly down into the ground and at the same time see if you can let the head go. And then on the in-breath, just relaxing that movement, drawing the back into a flat position, so back into its neutral position, but what you don't want to do is drop the lower back, so we want to keep the back straight, but draw the hips and the pelvis away from each other. So get the sense that your hips are moving backwards, chest is moving forwards, but actually you haven't gone anywhere because you've just created a lengthening effect in the spine. So we're going to do that with the breath. So you're going to breathe out, tuck the tailbone under, arch the spine to the ceiling, push the hands into the ground, draw your baby up in towards your body. And then as you breathe in, flattening the back, lengthening, drawing the hips and the chest away from each other. And just keep going. So go at your own pace. So whatever your breathing rhythm is, work with that. You want to try and get a really nice arch on the out breath because that's when you're lengthening the lower back muscles. So as you breathe out, the tailbone tucks under, lower back pushes up to the spine. Almost like you're gathering everything in towards your belly. And on the inhale, there's this expansive movement. So we're going to take this a little bit deeper now and take the hips back onto the heels. And in order to do that, during pregnancy, you're going to need to make some space for your abdomen. So you will take your knees wide enough apart so that you can come back. And as I keep mentioning every week to those of you that have been coming for a while, the knees are going to get wider as you progress through the pregnancy. So in the early stages, you might not even need to, and you haven't even got much of a bump. The knees can probably stay in the neutral position, but then as your bump starts to grow, the space between the knees will start to grow as well. So once you've done that, what you might want to do is bring the toes together and the knees wide. Then you come back to the upright position. Now you've got the knees in the right space. And we're going to do the same thing again. So we're going to breathe out, roll the spine to the ceiling, keeping that rounded back. And then take the hips all the way back to the heels. So you keep the tailbone tucked under, don't undo the tuck. And what you should find you've got here is a real stretch in your lower back. So again, this is what I've been calling this bread and butter pose in pregnancy. It's so nice on a pregnant lower back. You might even want to gently sway the hips from side to side while you're here, and that'll open up a little bit more deeply into the position. You might like being in this pose. This being here statically might give you a bit of a pull right where you want it. And then when you're ready to come up, you push your shins into the ground, and that will push you up away from the floor. And you do that on an in-breath. And then we do the same thing again. So you breathe out, tuck the tailbone under, gather everything up, and also take your hips slowly back onto heels. I'm going to give you the choice. You can stay here for a little while if it feels nice, if it feels like you're getting something into the lower back. But if you get more of a stretch by coming in and out of the pose, then you can just run it through with your breath. So when you're ready to come up, inhale, push the shins into the ground and rise all the way up. So we're going to do that a few more times. So the more we do this, the more the lower back can lengthen and stretch. And the next time you come up, you can make that the end of the pose. And I'm going to have a little bit of a side stretch. So from the all four position, just walk the hands, when I do this, walk the hands around towards the right side. So you're getting a bit of a stretch in the left side of the body. And then when you've come around as far as you can, take a long breath in and stretch into the left side of the body. And then when you've finished, walk your hands back to the centre. Walk your hands around to the left, so keep walking. Try not to lift up off the horizontal position, so don't walk your hands in towards you, walk them around the side. So you get this lengthening effect on the right side now, right waist. And take a long, slow breath in here. And then slowly walk the hands all the way back. And then we're going to finish coming back onto the heels again. So take the knees where they need to be. Exhaling. Bringing the hips all the way back onto the heels. So just enjoying this last opportunity here to stretch out the lower back. And then pushing into the shins to rise up. So now you can bring the knees back into a neutral position, whatever that is for you. So cramp stretch, taking your right leg back behind you, toes come onto the floor, and then you push the heel away, but you're not taking the hips back as well, otherwise you're not going to get the stretch. So you want to keep the rib cage lightly extending forwards as you push the heel away, and hopefully you'll get this stretch going deep into your calf muscle. If you're prone to cramp, which a lot of women are in pregnancy, there's a tendency to really feel this in the calf muscle because the calf muscle is tight. So you need to hold it until the stretch goes. If your wrist's hurting,
A little bit.
getting a bit of carpal tunnel.
I don't know, it just feels heavy on my wrist.
Right, do you want to, how are you coming onto your elbows? Is that a bit better?
Yeah.
Okay. So you keep the stretch going until that intensity eases off. And then just cross that leg behind. So now squeeze your thighs together. And a little bit of a tightening move for the pelvic floor. So you're going to do 5 pelvic floor squeezes here. So tightening, releasing, tightening, releasing, 5 times. And then take the foot back to where we started. Drop that foot flat onto the floor and then push into the left hand. And just open the right arm up to the ceiling. And then lengthen from the rib cage and draw that arm over the head, so you're lengthening through the side of the body. So keep pushing the right foot into the floor and lengthen the right arm away. Take a breath. And then lower the hand onto the floor and rotate. Okay, so let's have a hip stretch. You're going to slide the right knee forward, left leg back. So you want to take the knee a little bit out to the side, so you're making space. And then rock a little bit from side to side. So how does that feel in the hip? Anything, nothing?
Okay, in the hip, it's more across the pelvis, it's quite a stretch.
The back or the front?
Front, but it feels quite tight now.
Okay. So from here, see if you can very gently walk that right foot forwards a little bit. So if you've done any yoga before, this is pigeon pose, but it's a strong stretch for the hip. So just come to wherever you can. So it doesn't have to be a very big move. And you want to make sure that both hips are level. So try not to drop down onto the left hip or the right hip. And then just rise up onto your fingertips. And take a breath. And then release back down. So then push into your hands to slide the leg up. Make a space for your baby, and we're going to use this as a resting pose. So roll the spine to the ceiling. Come all the way back. Onto the heels, rest the wrists, so come onto your elbows and just circle the wrists. So it is another very interesting condition of pregnancy is this wrist pain. So it comes from the shoulders, and it's called carpal tunnel syndrome, but it's basically from just the excess fluid that we have in the body pinching the carpal tunnel, which is the bundle of nerves that comes from the spinal column into the hands, and it feeds through the shoulder, down the arms, and it gives us all the dexterity that we have in our hands. And anytime there's any compression around the shoulder joint, it affects the ability of the nerves to function properly in the hands. But it's very, very common. It's usually due to just general excess fluid. And it's often worse if there's a lot of swelling, a lot of edema as well. So pushing up onto your hands and knees, bring the knees back into the neutral position, and now take the left leg back. Now again, if you've got any issues with your wrists, you can come down onto your elbows here and just relax the wrists. So you keep pushing the left heel away. And we hold the stretch until the intensity goes away. So we want to get rid of the tightness in the calf muscle. And as most cramp happens at the universal cramp time of 3 o'clock in the morning, if you do this stretch before you get into bed, it's about 95% effective. Okay, so from here, you're going to take the leg behind you and then grip the thighs again. And we're going to do our 5 pelvic floor squeezes. And you can take the leg all the way back, and now you can slide the left knee forwards between the hands, stretch the right leg back out, just rock from side to side. And you can either stay here, or you can bring the foot a little bit further forward so that you're challenging the hip a little bit more. Again, we don't want the left hip to drop back onto the floor. We want the hips to be level. It's quite a strong stretch in the hips. If it's not comfortable, stay in the first position. Rise up onto your fingertips. Take a breath. And then release. Come all the way down. And push into your hands You can bring the knees back, widen the legs again, roll the spine to the ceiling, and then sink back onto your heels. And then come all the way up. Okay, lovely. So you're going to come back with the legs stretching out in front. Now you've got a couple of options. You can either stay, if you're comfortable, you can kind of stay where you are. If you feel that you need the support behind you, then shuffle back into that position you had at the beginning of the session, where you had the wall behind you to support you. So you choose what feels the most comfortable. So we're going to do a little bit more hip opening in the seated position. So you're going to bring the right leg up and then just drop the knee out to the side. So the sole of the foot is going to rest across the inner thigh. Now if your hips are quite tight and they don't quite reach the floor and it's pulling in the hip joint, then what you can do is take a block or a brick or your cushion and put it underneath your thigh wherever you need it to be so that you've got some support for it. And then we're going to bring the palms of the hands together and we're going to breathe in, take the arms all the way up over the head, and then on the out breath we're going to use the ha breath and bring the hands all the way down into the heart space. So the ha breath is pretty much what we did earlier. It contracts the muscles around the throat and it slows the breath down. In addition to this, we're going to lift the right knee up. So on the in-breath, the right knee lifts up, the palms reach up over the head. And then using that ha breath, dropping the knee back down and bringing the hands back into the heart center. So we're going to do that a few more times. So breathing in. Let the ribs lift as well, so the shoulders have a bit of a stretch. And then lowering back down on the exhale. So we'll do that 2 more times. Notice how it feels in the hip. Does the hip feel tight? I'm getting a little bit of movement out of the hip joint, a little bit of lifting and then lowering. So quite often on that lowering part, as you progress through the practice, you can get a little bit more of a stretch. Okay, and then you can relax the hands. Anything?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
But quite nice to release it then. It's far lower.
Yeah, that's it. So we're just going to work through all of them, and I'm just thinking one of them you're going to go, oh yeah, that's the one. With the one that makes your eyes water. Okay, so now just take that leg over and bring it in front. So the knee is on top and then the heel comes all the way round. So this stretches a different part of the hip. So this stretches the outside, the iliotibial band, that little muscle and tendon that runs all the way around the outside to the outside of the knee joint, and it gets right into your hip flexors. So often you can feel this quite deeply in the hip on the outside.
It's definitely whatever this is. It's where it's not so much comfortable, but it's definitely pulling what was normally pulling thing.
Yeah. Brilliant. So we found a core, found something. So again, you can do that lifting and lowering here. If that, obviously there's a limit to how much lifting. Got a baby here. You can lift a little bit on the inhale and then really drop that knee down on the exhale. So still using that hard breath, inhaling, knee rises, exhale. One more time. And then you're going to lift the knee up and we're going to do some exploratory movements. So holding the knee with your right hand and your foot with your left hand, just moving the leg across, so almost like you're rocking the knee from side to side. And again, this is a good one for loosening up any tightness in the hip, but also can highlight any parts of the hip that maybe are feeling a little bit tight or restricted. So once you've done that, we're then going to circle. So you're going to draw a circle with your knee as you move your thigh bone into the hip socket. And then circle it the other way, go in the opposite direction. And then the last move to explore the hips is to come into a half lotus position if you can. So for this one, you bring the top of your foot on top of the thigh now and let the knee drop down towards the floor. So this again works in a different part of the hip, so different articulation. And just see how that feels.
This is supposed to be pointing up my knee. There we go, that's good.
And then gently lift up. Take the legs out in front and have a little bit of a bounce. Roll them in and out. And then we do the same on the other side. So left leg comes up, bring the sole of the foot to the inner thigh, push the right leg away. Again, supporting that knee if you need it. Palms of your hands come together. So as you breathe in, the left knee lifts up, palms gently rise up, rib cage lifts. Find that extension in the body, and then on the out breath, hard breath, knee drops down towards the floor and the hands come back into the heart space. You're just continuing your own time, noticing if the hip feels different on this side. One last time. So notice if the repetition allows the knee to relax a little bit more. So often when you do something several times, by the time you do the last one, there's a difference in how it feels. And then coming into the half shoelace position. So now bringing the knee on top so that the heel comes around towards the opposite hip. So again, this is working the outer side of the leg. So this is an interesting one because it's not something that we normally stretch, and certainly in everyday life we never normally stretch this part of the body. Even in yoga, I mean, there was years of me practicing yoga before I was introduced to this one. Like, oh, that's an interesting sensation. So it might not be a pose that you do very often. It's one that a lot of athletes use because it really affects the cruciate ligament in the knee. And it's often something you'll be given as a remedial move if you've injured your knee joints. So some of you might have come across it as a physiotherapy practice. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to inhale and lift that knee up, and then we're going to exhale and relax the knee all the way down. And as always, when we do anything asymmetrically, noticing if it feels different. Is there more space on this side? Is there less space? Does it feel tighter? Does it feel looser? And what you find when you make these investigations is that we're very rarely the same on both sides. So just do that one more time. And I'm going to lift the leg up. You're going to hold the knee with your left hand and the foot with your right hand. And we're just going to do a little bit of rocking, so moving from side to side. And then we're going to circle, so make a big circle with the knee. And I'm going to circle in the opposite direction. And then you're going to see if you come into half lotus position on this side. So you're going to bring the top of your foot onto the right thigh. So the knee gently drops down towards the floor. And just notice how that feels. If it's not possible, then that's fine. You can come back into the, we call this half butterfly. This is half lotus position. So any way that you are working with the articulation in the hips is fine. And then release. And as we do before, give the legs a little bounce, a little bit on the shape. Okay, so we're going to do that sequence that I mentioned earlier. We're going to have the foot up against the back wall. So it's quite a nice strengthening practice. I'm going to move that way because otherwise I'm going to burn my foot on the radiator. So I will come over here. And what you need to do is to have some padding for your knee. So if you've got a cushion or a blanket, because it can be a little bit uncomfortable on the knee. And then you need to set yourself up. So what we're going to have is the right foot is going to come down to the floor. So you have to kind of get yourself all set up. So it's got to work from the wall forwards, if that makes any sense. So you start here, make sure the heel touches the wall with the foot on the floor, and then you're going to step the left foot forward. So we're kind of coming to basically lunging position, but we're going to have this additional support up against the wall. Because normally we do lunging positions and we'll do them freestyle, and that back foot will be free, but you do tend to get a little bit wobbly in this position. But when you anchor the back foot into the skirting board, you can kind of move anywhere you want to without falling over. It's a great stretch for your quad. So if you're not used to stretching this, these muscles, these four muscles at the front of your thigh, you're going to notice it. So what you need to do, make sure you've got something for the right knee is going to come on the floor. So come back and begin by placing the ball of your right foot against the skirting board or the door, so whatever you've got behind you. From there, you step your left foot forwards and you find your lunge position. So low lunge. And what you hopefully will find that as you push the ball of your foot into the wall, that you've got some stability and some support there. Does that all feel, can you feel that? It's a little less wobbly, isn't it? Not a lot, but it's a bit better. So you've got to keep that action moving back. So you've got to keep, every time you feel a bit wobbly, push the ball of the foot back into the wall. So now let the tailbone lengthen towards the floor. Feel that stretch in your quads. And then you're going to breathe in. Take the arms all the way up over the head. Now lengthen the right arms up to the ceiling. Lengthen the left arm up to the ceiling. Do that again. Every time you feel a little bit wobbly, just keep pushing through that back foot. Now take both arms up over the head. Breathe in. And then breathe out, bring the palms of the hands together. So now what you're going to do is, as you next breathe out, is push the right arm forwards and just kind of pull the left elbow back as if you're pulling the strings on a bow. And then push that hand forwards. So you're going to do that again. So you're going to breathe in, pull back on the string of your bow, and then exhale with that hard breath, push it forwards. Same again, pulling back on the string. And exhaling with your ha breath. And then you're going to go the other way. So now you're going to pull the right arm back on the inhale, and you're going to push it forwards on the exhale. So you're going to do that 2 more times. So breathing in, pull it back. Exhale, ha breath, push it forwards. So ha breath, for those who are new today, is one of the birthing breaths that does what I mentioned earlier. So it lengthens the exhale. And then we're going to finish by coming back into crescent moon pose, which is a little bit of a back bend, so stretching the front of the body. And then breathe out. And come down. And then you can ease leg back. Come onto all fours if you want. Maybe have a little bit of a shimmy and a shake before we do the other side. So ha breath as a birthing breath is one that invokes the quality of power and energy. So there are lots of qualities we need during birth. We need relaxation, we need softening, we need calming, but we also need power and courage and strength. Okay, so now you're going to push the ball of the left foot into the wall, and you're going to step the right foot forwards. So other side. So again, take some time to get yourself all set up, but anchoring that back foot into the floor. So ball of the back foot into the floor, knees supported, and then once you've done that, taking the arms all the way up over the head, and then lengthen through the left side, lengthen through the right side. And do that a few times. These side bends are really nice during pregnancy. Anytime you draw your rib cage away from your pelvis, you're making space. Space for your baby, space for your lungs. And then just bringing the hands down into the heart space. So just starting by taking the left hand forwards. And as you breathe in, pull the right arm back like the string on your bow. And on the exhale, ha breath, push the palm of the hand forwards. And do that 2 more times. So a little twist for the spine. So twisting poses again, good for the back. You kind of wring out the spine. And then we're going to do 3 on the other side. So now the left arm draws back on the inhale. On the exhale. 2 more times, and really feel the power and the strength that comes from this ha breath. This is a kneeling warrior pose, so we're invoking this warrior energy, warrior-S energy. And then when we finish, taking the arms all the way up over the head and lengthening. And then bringing the hands all the way down. Lovely. Okay, and you can bring that leg back. So if you had your mat puckered up like mine, you can unroll it. We're going to come up to standing. So we're going to come up, curling up. Stay where you are. Stay. Stay. Just because it's another nice stretch with the lower back. So you tuck your toes under, having a space between your knees again for your baby. Walk your hands back and then lift your knees off the floor. Now drop the heels down to the ground and just uncurl into a ragdoll position. Now you can have the knees as bent as you like. You want to feel the stretch along the spine, not in the hamstrings. So we're not intending to get the hamstrings straight. We are lengthening the back. Let go of your head, let go of your shoulders, and then let your back release. Now in your own time, slowly come up. So to come up, bend the knees even more. Push your feet into the ground and slowly come up, uncurling, uncurling, unfolding until you're all the way up, standing. So I'm just going to tip the camera up a little bit.